What was your first employment?
So I worked for one law firm only my whole career, Cummings & Lockwood. I started as a second-year summer associate, and then I was offered a full-time job and started in the fall of 1983, and I was there until January of 1998.
What did you do for Cummings & Lockwood?
I told them that I was really interested in being in their labor law department, and they said, that's great, so we're going to put you in litigation. Which I had studiously avoided, and I found that I really enjoyed it. And I ultimately got my wish because I concentrated in employment law and litigation.
You mentioned that there were half women in the class of Cummings & Lockwood. Of the 10, there were 5 women. And when you became a partner, how many of those women were with you?
So this is one of my great disappointments, that I was the only one that was still at the firm when I came up for partner 8 years later. I think family and life balance, it's not the easiest in a large law firm to figure out how to do all of that. And that's why I feel that I owe so much to Fred Weisberg, because he understood the need to be somewhat flexible. So for instance, when I had my first child, I took 4 months off. It was paid. That made a big difference for me, that I felt more comfortable going back to work. And in fact, with my son, I took 6 months off and then went back to work.
Do you feel as though your children affected your career in any way?
There were several times during my career whether I questioned whether I was achieving the appropriate family-work balance, and thought about getting out of litigation and maybe going into teaching. Ultimately, I didn't do it. I think they survived their younger years.
When did you become a partner?
So 8 years after I started, so that would have been 1991.
Did you have any particular experiences with judges and their attitude towards you?
I did see judges, as did some of my colleagues in the firm, that were somewhat dismissive of women attorneys.
Were you a mentor to anyone?
I was the head of hiring once I became a partner, and I was the head of pro bono. And I certainly mentored the younger associates.
Do you have any reflections about the legal profession and the role of lawyers in society?
I continue to think that lawyers play a very important role. I'm still a firm believer that the advocacy role for a lawyer results in a fairer result for people who use the court system.
So I think you said 1998 you left the firm, is that right?
January of 1998, I went on the trial bench. I think it was very helpful for me to have a variety of assignments, and in particular for me to move around the state as I did. I was in literally every corner of the state as a trial judge, and that helped me to see that different courthouses operate differently. It also helped me to see different judges, how they handled matters, and draw upon some of what I saw. And in terms of substance, given my current job, it was very helpful to do criminal, civil, juvenile, and to a lesser degree family.
What do you consider your most challenging, interesting assignment as a trial judge?
I was on the regional child protection docket, which were the longest cases for termination of parental rights, and I had one case. They were all hard cases because those are not easy decisions to make as to whether a child should be taken away from their parent permanently. But one in particular stands out in my mind. It was a young, I believe she was 8 or 9 at the time, young woman who had AIDS. Her mother loved her and was simply incapable of giving her the care that was going to keep her alive for a prolonged period of time. So her mother was resisting having her parental rights terminated. The foster mother was taking very good care of her. Her health was a lot better than it had been in her mother's care. And that was a very, very hard decision to make as to what to do in that case.
In 1998, you were appointed as a trial judge. At some point, you did stop off at the appellate court.
I had decided that I would apply through judicial selection to be eligible for the appellate court. mainly because I was interested in the writing aspect of it. I had found on the complex litigation docket that I really enjoyed, and the regional child protection docket, that I really enjoyed writing decisions. So that was in
2005?
2006, because I became Chief Justice in April of 2007. The first challenge that I had was, what were we going to do about these sealed files? There were a lot of them, and there really was no reason for a lot of those files to be sealed. Historically, certain files were being sealed from public view, primarily in family cases. The press had learned this and felt that it demonstrated not only a lack of transparency, but something even worse than that. And ultimately, most of them were unsealed. It was a symbolic issue that the branch needed to get past in terms of a view that it was too closed a system, that it wasn't transparent enough. And I felt strongly that that was a judicial function, and that we needed to demonstrate in good faith that we were doing things to become more transparent so that we could continue to run ourselves, which I thought was, as an independent branch of government, that was essential. I asked you to head up the Public Service and Trust Commission, and we came up with a strategic plan. One of the things that I found was that the branch had not had a strategic plan before. We came up with a 5-year plan of the areas based on trends that we were seeing, that we need to focus on access and making sure that justice was accessible to people, even, for instance, if they didn't speak the language or if they didn't have an attorney.
What is your greatest accomplishment, do you think?
One was access, which I just mentioned. Another was changing demographics and diversity. I felt very strongly that the branch's face was way too white, but I could do what I could to help get people in the pipeline to be appointed as judges. So we spent a lot of time with the minority bar associations, talking to them about the best way to do that and what were the barriers that were keeping people from applying to be judges. We put a lot of work into that, and I think there's been a change in the face of the branch. And then the other piece that I really did focus on was civil reform. That took a little longer to do. That was the second strategic plan. But we've really made an effort to make the system more efficient for people through individually assigning cases that should be individually assigned to judges, not just the complex litigation cases, but any case that requires some judicial involvement, and having mediation centers. My belief has always been, and there are others that disagree with me, but that if we're going to stay relevant, we have to be in the settling business as well as the adjudication business.
If a woman attorney or a woman is thinking of entering the legal profession now, what advice would you give her? So
flexibility and try it, because you'll surprise yourself. As a judge, I never thought that I would be particularly interested in juvenile law. To me, that's probably the most important work that our judges do. I didn't know going into this experiment whether I would be effective or not. Hopefully I have been. I've enjoyed 99% of every day that I've been in this role. So I think people shouldn't give themselves short shrift. They should be willing to try.